Good morning. I'm Daniel Posney, and this is called Shifting Perspective. It's all part of Self Mastery Soup. And every Monday morning, I just do a little 20 to 30 minutes max, different perspective on a certain topic. And today's topic is about what to do when the world no longer makes sense. And I was just feeling into this that, wow, what a great topic because wow, what's going on in the world right now is so kooky. I kind of nervous laughter that it's sort of like a science fiction movie of what is perceived as normal and what certain governments and things are that are asking people to do around the world in different countries. And it's pretty wacky and just a lot of stuff going on. So I wanted to address that and guide us into a place that helps us to not get so dogged down and so stuck in the muck of what the outside world wants us to, seems like it wants us to be sucked into. So I've got some notes that I want to share with you guys. So, so when the world no longer makes sense, I want to ask you, how long has it been since the world actually made sense? And I was thinking back about if I was back in the, when I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, seemed like it made better sense back then, but I was a kid. So maybe if I was an adult and Vietnam War was going on and hippies and free love and all that stuff, and it might seem like it made a little bit more sense, but I'm not really sure. And then I go back to the 50s and it seemed like it made a little sense there, but then there was also some stuff that was being swept under the rug and some real, women were being still pretty heavily oppressed. So to certain people, it made sense, but to a large majority also didn't make sense. So I'd have to go back even further. And I start going back further and further. And I did what I had in my mind was just out on the land with my garden in the sun. And if I could go wherever that year is, that made the most sense to me. But then when society and civilization and becoming civilized comes in, it all starts to lose its sensibilities. So the reason why I ask that question is because you start wondering what I've gotten accustomed to, what I've perceived as normal. Is that really, does it really make sense? When I really look at it, okay, what do? I make money. Let's say I'm a programmer or something like I was before. I make six figures by changing the color of a button that is represented by colors on a screen on the computer that's tapped into an invisible realm called the internet. That all that stuff has sort of made sense to us. But if someone were to come to this planet from the outside, how much of this would they really make sense and say that it made sense? There's also a comment by, I think, Krishnamurti, who is son of a deep philosopher and spiritual person. And he said something like, it's no measure of health by being successful in a sick society or something like that. So try to recall the original purpose your soul might have had to come here. That's a real good indicator for me to kind of pull back to myself and say, I know I've gotten wrapped up into the world and nothing makes sense anymore. Well, it's not supposed to, because I had an original purpose come in here, and then I got, pulled into fitting into society and what society thought was normal. So your original purpose here, did it have much to do with what you've been doing and how you've been doing it? So that's a really good question to ask yourself, is what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. Is that what you originally intended to do here? If you're a very successful businessman or businesswoman, was that your original intent? Probably not. Probably your original intent, your original purpose was something with a greater emphasis on healing and integration and raising consciousness and bringing love into this. It didn't have to do with a certain role or certain definition of making money. So I just wonder what my soul might have been trying to tell me over the years. If my soul, God, the universe, can only maybe move pieces around on the game board of life, and can't, more for most times can't directly tell me you need to do this, and so you stay on your path. If just the pieces are moved around, then I start kind of leaning this way. Maybe there's a death in the family and it causes me to stop what I'm doing and be more present in my life. Maybe I get some illness and I end up having to completely change the way that I've been living and eating. um, Maybe I have an accident and I lose a limb, and it causes me to really appreciate the rest of my limbs. So there seems like, if you really think about, like, if the pieces are being moved around, it's causing us to stay on this path that we're supposed to be on from the original time. So uh, was I meant to be a technician? And was I meant to be married to the first woman that I married 35 years ago? And I look back at who I was back then, and it made sense back then, but then I evolved, and then I got discouraged and I got depressed, and nothing really made sense. But what that caused me to do is to do something that was really hard at the time, to break out of that, to say the words, to take the actions, to move beyond the kind of the vibration of consciousness that I was in. So when I was in that vibration, um, partying, having sex, just working, it all made sense. But then I started to have these kooky ideas about consciousness and about doing something deeper, and it started to be birthed inside of me. And that birthing inside of me started to feel like, I'm not happy in this, and I don't know how to explain this. And I remember going to the marriage therapist, and she was asking me, "What's the problem?" And I was so blank. I had no idea how to talk because I didn't know what was in store for me. It was like I was like trying to see around a corner of a building. I had no view on what was in store for me. Of course, now I have a great view of it. Hindsight is 2020, or whatever, however you want to say it. But back then, I had no idea that I'd be in this place, in this position, with this life. So back then, all I can say is that I was unhappy, and I did things to distract myself. But if you could imagine my soul or God or creator going, all right, just keep on distracting yourself just as long, just to hold out for a little bit longer, because there's something coming your way. And I see that so many times in sessions, that the world makes no sense to them, and they're going through a divorce, and they're having to sell their multi-million-dollar home, and they're having to do all these changes, and they feel like I felt. How does this turn into something good? How does this transition into something that I can really be happy with? Because right now I'm in the crap of it right now. But it's just only because you can't see around that corner. But around that corner, if you do the work on yourself to bring more clarity into your life, it starts to shift into actually another reality where things are different ways of living, different experiences are yours to have instead of where you were before. So what I was telling a recent guy in a recent session, it's really good that you're feeling lost, because you're not supposed to feel found right now. You're not supposed to know in which direction you're supposed to go right now. Just like I wasn't supposed to know where and how and what for and all this stuff back then. So the fact that he felt completely on the edge of his life, like I did, he's just completely, wow, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, kind of thing. And that for me was a very healthy place to be, not to go forward on taking action to leave the planet, but to just realize that I don't know how to do this anymore. And for me, that's exactly what I needed. And for this guy too, he's just been kind of pushing, pushing, pushing. And at one time, it made sense. He was making lots of money. He had a multi-million-dollar home. He had lots of stuff. He had a beautiful wife. And it all seemed like he was successful. And he had very wealthy and well-known, famous clients. Wow, how can you think that life is like this? Really makes sense. It's really, I've done well. And then it's kind of like your soul is in the background going, it's not really why we came here. It's not really why you're here. So it's kind of like, I feel like the soul kind of just sits there and goes, we're just going to let it crumble. And I'm sure that's not what's happening, but it just feels like the soul is going, it's not sustainable. And I'll wait till you're done, and wait till it crumbles down, and then you can reconnect with me, and then we'll see what we can create together. That's kind of how I felt that my life was going when it all didn't make sense, is because I wasn't really connected with my soul and with feeling and with intuition and really going with this, the direction of the flow of life. And I was just kind of over here doing. And on the outside, it looked great. But on the inside, God, I hope that I could sustain this for another 30, 40 years. And of course, I couldn't. So when that realization happens, if you're in front of the right person or video or a song or something, that you get a realization that I'm in the right place right now. This crumbling down, this breaking down of an old paradigm is making room for a new paradigm, for a new light to come in. So there was a spiritual teacher named Ram Dass, and I remember him talking about how he had this idea. He's become this spiritual teacher, and very well known. And I'm Ram Dass, and this is just the way he talks about himself. He's kind of self-deprecating in a really loving way. And he was saying, and then I got stroked. I had this idea of doing a radio show and all this stuff, and then I got stroked. And it said it completely just destroyed me. And he said that my ego self, it just really got upset, and I had this idea I was going to do all these things. But then he said that with the stroke came this great realization and this different way of being, this different way of speaking. It caused him to really sort of count his words. To each word, he had to really find his words because the stroke affected his speech. So then after the stroke, and I think he got stroked twice, and so he started to talk in this very, he was already a good speaker, but then after the stroke, every word had to be really considered, because it took a lot for him to put the words out. So that story really helped me. So what can we do when what seemed to work in the past no longer works? Well, the thing that I realized is that I needed to change and evolve. If it's not working, I needed to realize that honestly, it's no longer working, and I need to stop pushing it and stop trying to force it. And what I wanted to say the other day is to this client is I think I did say this. Our problem, when we're very capable people, that's a problem, because you'll push an unsustainable idea or way of living because you're so capable. And so this thing that isn't really yours to be and to live, that because you can just figure things out, you'll just keep on pushing it and forcing it. And it, squeezes through, and it looks like success, or it looks like you're doing something, but it's only because you're putting so much effort and so much force into this thing. And that can be a problem for those people like myself that, I figured things out. I taught myself programming. I never went to college. I figured out all these things, and that can be a detriment sometimes. So what the message is that there's a greater, more fulfilling purpose for you that you really can't consider or dream up right now from your mind. It has to come in a more of a direct experience kind of way. So how do we move through feelings of deep disappointment, discouragement, and anguish? You need to feel what is in front of you fully. So this is an opportunity to fully engage and be present with the feeling. So I know that kind of contradicts what people might say is that, I need to go away from the feeling. I don't want to feel that. But really, if you look at your life in a more of a metaphysical kind of way, in a more of a engaging with spirit kind of way, could it be that the feelings that you distracted yourself from in the past by drugs or alcohol or sex or any other addictive behaviors, or even sports like I did, could it be that there now is the time to really engage in this? Like grief is a big one. Could it be that the reason why the grief is hitting you so hard is because way back when something happened, you lost somebody, and you didn't have the time or the support to really grieve, to really appreciate that loss? And so grief keeps on coming up. And, here's people, and I've lost my brother and my sister and my mom all the same year, and my dog and my job. So grief is kind of the theme that's coming up. So could it be that this time we're things don't make sense anymore, that if you go into what is it that you're feeling, to go into that and make sure that you're completely feeling it. And if you've completely felt it, yep, I've got it. I've had so many tears about it, and I know what that feels like. Then you can let it go with the realization that I've actually spent some time here. So use this feeling to recalibrate and understand that you may have been pushing an unsustainable way of living. Life is supposed to be fulfilling, encouraging, and satisfied. I know you might say, well, that's not really how it works, and that's not really the real life and kind of thing. And you might think that I'm full of baloney, but I would say you might be full of baloney, because I know what this life feels like, and I know that this is the way that it's actually supposed to be. And it's not, I'm not blowing smoke. It's not a dream life. It's actually my life, and a lot of other people that I know, their life as well. And I know the other life. I know the other life saying, well, that's just a pie in the sky and stuff. But if you really look at how, if I were to look at how I was thinking and believing and acting, and what I was doing to myself, and how I wasn't really supporting myself to live the life that I have now, then I can be more honest with myself. Well, how do you expect to create that kind of life living the way that you're living? Are you really doing what you need to be doing to live that kind of life? And I know the mind wants to come out, even when I say this, the mind that wants us to come up and say, yeah, but that's not really possible, and I've had it really hard, and da da da. Yeah, that mind is not your friend. That mind is the one that's keeping you in the muck of it. It's time to break out of that and be the captain of your ship again, and start to control your life a little bit better. So how does life get better than this? This is something that I remember when I first came to Sedona, we had up on our bulletin board, um, for us to see every morning. And it was really cool to wake up and see this question, and it said, how does life get better than this? And it's like a question that has to be answered from the universe. So if you ask, instead of asking God to fulfill this need or to do this thing for me, and then you're disappointed because it doesn't happen for some reason, if you ask the question of how does life get better than this, that's a question that can be answered. And that's one that has this sort of expectation, or this just you start to manifest how life gets better because you're expecting it. It was a really good tool for me, and it's still one that I use to this day. Is after I finish my day, wow, the day was so good. How does it get better tomorrow? So, and it just keeps on happening. Life isn't great for positive thinkers as much as is great for awake, conscious, heart-centered people. I'll say that again. Life isn't great for positive thinkers as much as it is great for awake, conscious, heart-centered people. The positive thinking will only last you for certain amount of time, because if you have the resistance and the negative beliefs also going on at the same time, no amount of positive thinking is really going to sustain you. But it's really coming down back to the original source of the problem and the original source of the resistance, and releasing that and coming back to your authentic self, which is a much more sustainable way of being. In fact, I haven't heard too many people that have had that awakening experience of coming back to their authentic self and dropping back down into crap, into the life that they had before. It's very rare that that happens. So start to feel the direction of flow, and you will always be supported. That's the thing that I found, is that once I start to kind of feel into what feels right to me, what's the most exciting to me, where is my excitement lie, everything starts to happen for me, and life starts to really support me. So like one of my teachers told me all the time, follow your excitement, Daniel, follow your heart. And when it sounded like I wasn't really doing that, like I was in some kind of obligation, he would ask me, well, as long as this is exciting for you, there's a little bit like a sarcasm in there a little bit that really helped me out. He would say, well, as long as you're excited about that, keep going with that. And I kind of roll my eyes and think about what I was doing and why am I doing this? So I'll leave you with this one last thing from Abraham Hicks. You are adaptive beings, and you are not finished as a species in your evolution. You are as unevolved now to what you will be 2,000 years from now, or 1,000,000 years from now, as the relics that you are digging up of the caveman. We are all eternally continuing to evolve. So that's what we're doing. And there's a book that kind of describes this concept, and also there's a science that describes it. It's called cymatics. The idea is that we align ourselves and things are in alignment, and then at a certain point we break ourselves down, and we break ourselves down into more of a chaotic state. So imagine it's like this chaotic state, nothing really being formed, but in that chaotic state, there's this ability to raise into a higher frequency of consciousness or form, but the old way needs to be broken down first. And that is such a great metaphor or analogy of what actually happens. And this kind of happens in science, in the world, that it's things start to break down and they recreate themselves into something else. And you see it all the time. Sometimes it's called metamorphosis. So if things aren't making sense to you, follow that. Okay, things are breaking down. All right. All the things that you may have held on to, let them break down so something new and different, maybe much different, can be created. Thank you. I love you. Bless you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see and hear of you next time. All right. Bye.